2 weeks after burying the woman who raised her, Samantha Miller received a thick ivory envelope that didn't feel like closure, but a summons. Not from court, not yet, but from her past. The letterhead read Charleston Law Offices, but the message came straight from the grave, an invitation to the reading of her mother's will. No call, no email, no forewarning, just her name, handwritten in perfect cursive like a place card at a dinner party she was never meant to attend. She sat in her Portland apartment, holding the envelope like it was ticking. Her hands trembled, but not from grief. It was something older, deeper, a cold tension that had settled into her bones years ago, nurtured by silence. By the way, her older sister Clara had turned their mother's death into a stage production without offering her even a supporting role. Samantha had flown in from the West Coast, 5 minutes late, and Clara made sure everyone knew. Her sister's hug at the funeral was for the audience. The real message was delivered in a whisper when Samantha approached the casket. Don't ruin the atmosphere. That sentence hadn't left her since. It wrapped around her spine like a steel cord. She hadn't touched their mother's hand, hadn't spoken a word before they closed the casket. Clara had kept her away, and everyone let her. Now, the will. She packed her things in silence. The silk handkerchief their mother gave her before college was still folded in the nightstand. D.H.M. Dorothy Helen Miller. The initials felt like a wound that had never properly healed. She tucked the handkerchief into her coat pocket, locked the door behind her, and boarded the red-eye flight to Charleston. The estate was just as she remembered. Immaculate, distant, performative. Magnolia trees lined the driveway like guards to a kingdom she was no longer a part of. She parked by the gardener's shed, not the front like Clara and her husband always did. Elise, the longtime housekeeper, opened the door and looked stunned. You really came back. Inside, the house still smelled of lavender and lemon oil, but the warmth was gone. Clara arrived shortly after, clad in a cream silk dress with a wine glass in hand and that trademark smile, polished, cold, theatrical. Oh, Samantha, I didn't think you'd make it. Her words dripped with feigned politeness. Samantha didn't respond. She didn't need to. The eyes of distant relatives in the parlor all flicked toward her, then away again like she was something shameful. Only Uncle Ray gave a solemn nod from across the room. The reading took place outside, under trellises dressed in pale blue linens. Of course it did. Clara had turned it into a garden party when attorney Malcolm Grant arrived, briefcase in hand. Clara nearly rushed to greet him, but Samantha saw something subtle. Clara slipping a small envelope beneath the table to their Uncle Alan. The motion was clean, rehearsed. When Malcolm called for the primary beneficiary to confirm identity, Samantha signed the form without flinching. Clara sipped water slowly, eyes like daggers. Surprises should be managed, she said sweetly. Shouldn't they, Sam? But the surprise wasn't Clara's to manage. Malcolm read the will, everything, estate, assets, property, income, went to Samantha. The silence that followed was deafening. A wine glass shattered near the mimosa tray. Clara bolted upright. That's not possible. Her voice cracked. She wasn't in her right mind. Malcolm didn't even look up. He confirmed notarization. Witnesses. Legal soundness. Samantha said nothing, though her fingers dug into the linen napkin in her lap. Then came the letter, a handwritten message from their mother to Samantha. She read it aloud, her voice barely louder than the wind. Dorothy had known. She had seen the hospital bills Samantha paid in secret. She had known Clara tried to sell the estate while she was sick. The will wasn't changed out of spite, but out of recognition, because Samantha listened when no one else did. Clara screamed, "It's all lies. Manipulation. You poisoned her mind." Samantha lifted the letter for all to see. This was her voice, not mine. This is the truth. The guests murmured. No one defended Clara, not even her husband. The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara stood in the middle of the garden like a statue cracked at the base, trembling but refusing to fall, her fists clenched at her sides, nails digging crescents into her palms. She opened her mouth as if to deliver another protest, but nothing came. Uncle Alan, the one she had tried to bribe just moments ago, stared at the grass beneath his shoes, his lips pressed into a thin, regretful line. Her husband, Thomas, avoided her gaze entirely, studying the pattern of the tablecloth like it held the answers. It was over, and yet it wasn't. Samantha remained seated, the letter from her mother still in her lap, her heart beating against the walls of her chest like it wanted to scream and weep all at once. But she kept her face steady. This wasn't triumph. It wasn't victory. It was something much more fragile. Vindication, yes, but tangled with sadness. She had not wanted to be the only one left standing. She had only wanted to be seen. Clara turned sharply on her heel and stormed off the patio. No one followed. Even the birds in the trees had gone quiet. 3 days later, the papers came. A manila envelope in Samantha's mailbox stamped with the seal of the Charleston County Superior Court. Summons. Clara had filed a formal suit. The accusation was brutal. Emotional coercion. Undue influence. Fraud. Clara's legal team claimed Dorothy Miller had been mentally impaired during the revision of the will, and that Samantha had manipulated her into changing it. Samantha sat at her kitchen table in Portland, hands cold against the ceramic mug of untouched coffee. She'd stayed up for nights by her mother's bedside, held her hand during the fevers, listened to her breathe when words were too much, and now those moments were being rewritten as a strategy, a scheme. But she wasn't unprepared. From the bottom drawer of her file cabinet, she retrieved a metal box. Inside was everything her mother had left her. Not jewelry, not heirlooms, but truth, documents, doctor's notes, a video in her mother's handwriting on every envelope. For Samantha, if needed, the video was the anchor. In it, Dorothy Miller sat upright in bed, dressed in a cream sweater, hair brushed, voice calm and clear. I amended my will because I wanted Samantha to have the house. Not because she asked, but because she didn't. She listened. She cared. I was lucid. I was not coerced. And then, that devastating truth. Clara tried to sell the estate while I was hospitalized. She never asked me what I wanted. She told me what should be done. Samantha sent it all to her attorney, Dana Marshall, a woman with sharp eyes and no appetite for theatrics. After watching the footage, Dana looked up and said one sentence. We're not just defending, we're going on the offensive. The courthouse in Charleston was humming the morning of the hearing. Reporters lined the steps like vultures, anticipating the first scent of drama. Samantha walked in with Dana Marshall at her side. Calm on the outside, but inside, every breath was a negotiation, not of fear, but of control, of pain, of what had been taken and what was now hers to reclaim. The courtroom itself was a theater Clara had performed in before. School board campaigns, alumni events, donor galas. But today, she didn't get to write the script. She wore a plum suit, lips lined sharp, hair in a flawless twist. But Samantha saw through it. The twitch in her jaw, the shallow breaths, the way her husband sat just slightly apart from her on the plaintiff's bench. It all betrayed the performance. Judge Whitaker presided, mid-60s, former military, known for cutting through dramatics like butter. His voice was gravel, his gavel unforgiving. Miss Harper, he said, looking to Clara first. Your opening statement. Clara's attorney rose, reciting legal jargon dressed in dramatic flair. Fragile mental state, manipulative environment, unfair advantage. Samantha didn't flinch. She had already lived through the accusation in her sister's eyes 1,000 times. Dana rose when called, her tone surgical. She spoke not with emotion, but with truth backed by timestamps, signatures, medical affidavits. Then came the USB. Your Honor, Dana said, placing it gently on the table. We'd like to submit this video recorded under full legal consent. 3 weeks before the decedent's passing, the content directly addresses the plaintiff's accusations. The judge nodded. Play it. Every head turned to the screen. Samantha's breath caught as her mother appeared. Smaller, older, but so unmistakably clear. Dorothy's voice broke the air. I am of sound mind. I am not being forced. I changed my will because I trust my youngest daughter. Samantha. She did not ask. She simply stayed. Then, after a pause, Clara tried to sell this house without my permission. She even staged the interiors. I never gave my consent. Clara visibly stiffened. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Thomas, her husband, looked down again. His jaw clenched. The video ended. Silence thickened. Dana stood again. We also have affidavits from the attending physician. Dr. Clanton, confirming full cognitive awareness, and a letter from Nurse Caroline Caldwell verifying the conditions under which the video was taken. Judge Whitaker nodded slowly. Thank you. Counsel. Then he turned to Clara. Do you have any further evidence or rebuttal? Clara stood slowly, but the confidence she wore like a crown had cracked. My mother was medicated. She didn't know what she was saying. This is character assassination. The judge raised a hand. Miss Harper, I reviewed the dosage and medication log submitted with your sister's evidence. There is no indication of impairment. Clara looked around the room, eyes desperate. You all think she was a saint, she hissed. But you didn't live with her. She was cold, manipulative, and Samantha. She just swooped in when Mom was dying and played savior. Dana didn't rise. She didn't need to. The judge leaned forward. And yet, your mother's own words contradict that. Clara collapsed into her seat. Her hands trembled, and for the first time, she looked small, not defeated, but revealed. The judge's gavel struck once, not to silence a room, because it already was, but to signal the weight of truth landing hard. The court finds the will signed by Dorothy Helen Miller on February 10th to be valid, binding, and executed under full cognitive capacity. His voice was clear, devoid of sympathy or anger, just judgment laid bare. Samantha exhaled for the first time in what felt like weeks, not a sigh of relief, but release. The kind of breath that only comes when you finally put down a burden you carried through every room of your childhood. Dana placed a firm hand on her arm. No smile, just silent acknowledgement of the battle they had just won. Clara didn't move. Her body was present, but the fire was gone. The courtroom no longer hers to command. Even Thomas didn't look her way. He rose without a word, stepping past her like she was part of the courtroom decor. Her eyes, rimmed red from the pressure she refused to show, followed him, pleading, confused, empty. Samantha walked past her sister with calm steps, no hesitation. As she neared the exit, Clara muttered under her breath, loud enough for only her to hear. You think you won, but you didn't. You just wore a better mask. Samantha paused. The words didn't land like a dagger. Not anymore. She turned slowly and looked Clara in the eyes, those same eyes that used to tower over her, command her, shame her into silence. I didn't wear a mask, she said. I wore the truth. You just never learned how to see it. And then she left, outside the courthouse. The midday sun blazed. Reporters hovered, cameras ready. But Samantha didn't stop. She didn't need applause. Her mother had already spoken for her, left her final testament not in wealth, but in trust. Later that evening, she returned to the Charleston estate, now hers by name, but still layered in ghosts. The handkerchief with her mother's initials rested on the mantel, next to a framed photograph taken before the illness. Dorothy in her garden, a soft smile on her lips, surrounded by lavender and wild jasmine. Samantha didn't uncork wine. She didn't call friends. She didn't update social media or celebrate. She simply sat in her mother's old armchair, legs folded beneath her, letter in hand. The real inheritance wasn't the estate or the money. It was the letter, the final choice her mother made, in full clarity. Without fear or favor, she wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. She was the one remembered when it mattered most. Thank you for watching this story on Vengeance Within. If this story moved you, if you've ever fought to protect the truth no one else believed, then you know how much strength it takes to stand alone. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Vengeance Within for more stories where justice doesn't knock. It kicks the door in.